Amazing true story. I was locked in a freezer for 3 hours. Discover the incredible choice that changed my life forever. Jake stood in the early dawn light, the familiar scent of fresh meats enveloping him like an old friend. It was the lifeblood of his butcher shop, his father's legacy, bustling with life in every corner. Customers greeted him with warmth, thieves sighed for the good old days of quality. Yet now, with a corporate supermarket casting its long shadow at the edge of town, each day felt heavier, filled with the lingering fear of loss. Bowls stacked upon one another, piling like the boxes of meat he arranged with precision. Family dinners with his kids, Lily and Ben, had become a distant memory, replaced by thoughts of survival. The pressure twisted in Jake's gut, tightening like a vice. Each customer's smile carried a weighty expectation. Just one more day, he muttered to himself as he sliced a brisket. What if today was the day when it all unraveled? What if he could no longer provide for his family? The thought made his hands tremble, and he swore he could hear his father's voice in every cut, urging him to keep going. Yet, as Jake returned home late, the laughter of his children felt distant, echoing through the empty rooms of his heart like a haunting melody. Was he enough? Could he carry the weight of his father's dreams without losing his own family? As he finished closing the shop that evening, he headed into the walk-in freezer to reorganize supplies. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. The chilling air engulfed him, a crushing silence enveloped them both. Panic surged. His mind raced with frantic thoughts. What if he was trapped here forever? What if he never returned to see his children again? The frost nipped at his skin, but it was the icy grip of despair that froze his heart. The photograph of his family crumpled in his pocket felt heavier than before, a reminder of the life he yearned to protect. Moments turned into eternities as he wrestled with fear. Adrenaline coursed through his veins. Memories of his father's words whispered amid the frost, "Be strong, son, fight for what you love." Yet, with each passing second, his resolve crumbled under the weight of uncertainty. Should he fight for his legacy, risking it all, or focus on his safety? Would he fail the very family he loved so dearly? Every heartbeat echoed against the chilling walls of the freezer, mirroring the tumult inside him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The cold began to seep deeper, mingling with the growing doubt festering in his mind. Should he let the fear hold him or embrace the legacy that his father fought to build? He felt the chilling weight of expectations resting heavily upon his shoulders, constraining his breath. With memories swirling like snowflakes in a blizzard, Jake knew he had to act, to choose. But as the door remained firmly shut, he realized that each agonizing second carried a stakes, a decision that could define their future. Would he emerge from this as more than just a butcher trapped in a freezer, or lose everything he held dear? The anxiety clawed at him, leaving him with a singular truth. Right now, he stood at the crossroad of survival and legacy, with nothing but darkness around him, and the choice ahead. Jake pressed his palm against the unforgiving steel of the freezer door as if he could will it open with sheer willpower. Breath fog in the air, he tried to gather his thoughts, each one slipping away like the warmth of his memories. This was his test, a bizarre crucible in which he must reevaluate everything he had built, not just the butcher shop, but the man he was. Fear gnawed at him, yet beneath it simmered a fierce determination. His father's teachings echoed louder now, "Fight for what you love." How could he, a man reduced to a shadow behind a cold door, embody that fighting spirit? What did it mean to fight when he felt so powerless? He shifted his weight, feeling the stiffness in his limbs from the cold, and began pacing. Each step echoed in the silent chamber, punctuating the stillness with a sense of urgency. To keep his mind sharp, he envisioned the shop's bustling atmosphere, the customers who relied on his craftsmanship and honesty. They needed him. His children needed him. Jake's chest tightened. Then, a thought flared as brightly as a beacon: what if instead of succumbing to despair, he found a way to adapt? The world outside was shifting. Families had begun to seek out organic, locally sourced meat, wary of corporate giants masking freshness with cheap prices. What if he leveraged that, becoming not just a butcher but a fixture of community trust? What if he could create a niche that resonated with the very people who had cheered him on over the years? Jake's heart raced at this epiphany. He could envision a future workshops where families learned the art of butchery, a community cooking evening that transformed his shop into a vibrant hub where laughter and love met over shared meals. This could be a rebirth, not merely for him, but for the butcher shop. Yet, could he carry through such vision amidst the isolation of this freezer? Suddenly, the idea crystallized further. He could approach the corporation not as a competitor, but as an ally, offering partnerships instead of fighting in the shadows. There was power in negotiation and possibility in collaboration. By becoming involved in local farmers' markets, Jake could reinvent his shop as an essential community player. Fear melted slightly at this prospect, replaced by a pulse of excitement. In that frigid moment, he felt the first glimmers of confidence. Progress began with the choices he made in confronting his challenges. As memories of Lily and Ben surged forth, their laughter grounding him, Jake resolved to step beyond his insecurities. He wouldn't allow fear to dictate his future. With renewed vigor, Jake began to pound on the door. "Help!" Gritting his teeth, he shouted, "I won't be trapped here any longer." Each blow echoed with a determination born from desperation. He knew in that moment this was not just about butchering meat, it was a fight to claim his life back, a determination to face adversity head-on. The steel suddenly shifted. A creak. A small gap opened. With every ounce of will, Jake pushed forward, his body surging into the newly formed space. A gust of warm air enveloped him and he stumbled forward, positioning himself against the doorframe. Uncertainty hung in the air, but as he stepped out into the light, it felt dizzying. There was no way he would let this moment be overshadowed by fear. Instead, it was a rebirth. Outside, the sun painted the sky in hues of gold. But the real dawn was within, igniting a flame of ambition. What he had envisioned would come to fruition. He would need a strategy, and that required planning, resources, and ultimately, courage. That gentle rejection of fear marked the crossroads he had so desperately sought. And with that clarity, a new question loomed on the horizon like an adventurous storm. How would he execute this plan? What risks would he face in the process of transforming his legacy, and would those who had walked away from him in the past join him for this journey? Would he finally confront the corporate behemoth that threatened to erase his existence? Jake stood in the warm sunlight, the bustling streets of his town contrasting sharply with the isolation he had just escaped. Every breath filled his lungs with hope, and yet, alongside that warmth flickered a twinge of anxiety. How to move forward from this moment? He clenched his fists, feeling the rough calluses on his palms, a testament to the years spent honing his craft. The sun illuminated a path, both literally and metaphorically. He peered at the storefront of his butcher shop, faded but still standing resolutely amidst the changing landscape of commerce. How could he reclaim it? Jake understood that evolution required action, a blend of courage and strategy that he had yet to fully grasp. Inspiration flickered in the back of his mind, turning his thoughts to logistics, funds, and people. He needed a plan of action, an intricate framework that tackled not just the operational aspects but the emotional investments too. How could he re-engage a community that had felt the tremors of his stagnation? What would it take to reconnect with customers who once saw value in his offerings? Breathless children left his thoughts when he began to spiral into self-doubt. The specter of failure nudged at the edges of his resolve. But as he visualized those vibrant workshops, he could see more than just potential. He saw faces, familiar faces eager to learn and contribute. Could he leverage his skills beyond merely providing meat? He could share knowledge, turn his business into a learning space where families could bond over culinary practices. This needed structure, he realized. It required visits to suppliers, meetings with local farmers who shared his ethos about sustainability and quality. Jake seized his phone, fingers trembling slightly as he scrolled through contacts, his heart rate picking up. He settled on a few local producers and sent out messages inquiring about collaboration. As he waited, anxiety surged through him. Each second felt like an eternity. The fear of rejection clawed at his gut. Yet, beneath that fear lingered a conviction he had to move regardless of the response. Jake took a deep breath and mentally mapped out his vision: workshops, special promotions for families, events that connected customers not just to him as a butcher but as a facilitator of experiences. He stepped into his shop, the familiar scent of aged meat wrapped in nostalgia wafting through the air. But this was not just about preserving the past, it was about shaping a vibrant future. Jake walked behind the counter with purpose, imagining the day he'd see families trying their hand at butchery, children experimenting with spices, laughter filling the shop's walls. He could almost hear the chatter now. His digital clock blinked 10 a.m., and he knew this was the time for decisive action. It was time to confront Carl, the corporate representative who had been circling like a hawk. A meeting request swiftly filled Jake with anticipation and trepidation. Smoothing his palms against the countertop, he steeled himself with reminders of that which he had endured. He was more than a butcher, he was a father and a dreamer fighting for an identity against an unforgiving tide. The call came through. With every syllable, Jake articulated his vision, feeling his voice grow stronger with every word spoken. Carl's initial reluctance was palpable, yet as Jake laid out potential collaborations, he felt the subtle shift. Questions about shared markets arose, and opening a slight glimmer of willingness. When the call ended, the tremor of fear transformed into exhilaration, but not without realization. This was only the beginning. Even if Carl agreed, he was acutely aware of how much more he had to do. Jake had to prepare for myriad challenges ahead. Could he sustain this burgeoning momentum? Would the community embrace him again? As he hung up, Jake caught sight of a family passing by the window, children peering in with curiosity. They waved, and he returned their enthusiasm, a flicker igniting in his chest. This was his chance not just to reclaim his shop, but to redefine it in alignment with his values. The journey ahead promised not only personal transformation but a reclamation of his place as a trusted community figure. But just as hope permeated his plans, seeds of doubt began to sprout. What if the corporation denied collaboration? What if the community turned its back once again? The questions began to stack like ominous thunderclouds, and he knew this confrontation would require more than resolve. It would demand an unwavering readiness to stand up against whatever uncertainties lay ahead. With determination, Jake turned his eyes to the horizon, where challenges awaited and the scale of his dreams loomed large. The time had come to face the doubts that haunted him in tandem with the corporate giant. Could he truly transform his old legacy into something entirely new, something worthy of standing against the tide? Jake awoke the next morning to the sound of raindrops tap dancing against the window. The rhythmic patter stirred a mix of anxiety and clarity within him. Today was critical. An hour had passed since he received a tentative acknowledgement from Carl, but that was merely the first step. The weight of uncertainty lingered heavily in the corners of his mind. He brewed a strong cup of coffee, hoping caffeine would sharpen his focus for the challenges ahead. Sipping the bitter warmth, he flipped through his mental checklist. The list was long, but at the top rested one crucial item: refine his pitch to the community. If he was to reignite the passion for his shop, he had to convey not only his ideas but the essence of why he was pursuing this transformation. Jake could feel his heart racing as he penned a few notes in a worn journal tucked away on the counter, each stroke of the pen grounding him. His hands trembled slightly with both nerves and purpose as he crafted a message that captured his vision of community workshops, hands-on experiences, and a return to culinary roots. He then turned his attention back to the logistics. With a quick glance at the clock, he realized time was slipping away. He couldn't afford to lose momentum. Jake hopped into his car, the rain drumming a steady rhythm on the roof as he drove toward a local farmer's market he had frequented in better days. Meeting those who understood his commitments to sustainability would be crucial. They could potentially aid in rallying his community base around fresh, quality products. Upon arriving, the market bustled even amidst the drizzling rain. Vendors huddled beneath makeshift tents, customers darted between stalls. Jake paused to take it all in. The vibrant colors and the mingling scents awakened memories of the market's previous light, an era when people gathered as much for the camaraderie as for the food itself. He approached a familiar face, Elise, a fellow butcher and supporter of local agriculture. "Jake. It's great to see you." She greeted him warmly despite the weather. Her smile radiated encouragement, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside him. "I need your help," he said, a new resolve surging through him. "I've got some ideas for workshops and events, but I can't do it alone. We need to bring the community back together." Elise raised an eyebrow, curiosity tugging at her lips. "What is the vision? How can I assist?" Jake laid out his thoughts, articulating them with an enthusiasm that surprised even him. As he spoke, he shared some of the hesitations that had weighed on him. This was his passion, and the excitement in Elise's eyes spurred him forward. Together, they brainstormed ways to create engaging workshops, not just butchery, but also cooking classes, local recipe nights, and perhaps even farm-to-table dinners. They exchanged contact information, and Jake felt a sense of accomplishment radiate through him. The ember of hope flickered brighter in his chest, igniting visions of families returning to the butcher shop eager to learn and explore. But then a chilling thought crossed his mind: the precarious nature of these plans, how quickly they could fall apart with a single unexpected setback. Returning to his shop, Jake was met with the familiar scent of aged meats. This was his dominion, a long-fought territory. He felt a surge of determination as he recalled his thoughts from the previous night. Challenges needed to be confronted. Each day would demand perseverance, and that wasn't just about the business, it was about reclaiming his own narrative. But as he settled behind the counter, staring out through the window, the weight of impending decisions surfed on the edge of his conscience. Could he trust Carl's projections? Would the community rally? Just as his thoughts spiraled into doubt, the faint chime of the shop door jarred him back to reality. A solitary customer wandered in, peering curiously through the display case. "Hey there," Jake greeted, forcing a smile. "Looking for something special?" But to his surprise, the customer maintained a distant gaze, seemingly unaware of the warmth Jake tried to exude. A moment of unease hung in the air as the customer hesitated, a stark reminder of how fragile those first steps back into trust could be. A new challenge lay ahead. Could he win back the hearts of customers? His next move would define everything. As the door swung shut behind the silent figure, Jake felt that ache of vulnerability. He understood that every interaction from this point on would shape his journey. What he didn't know was how deep those challenges could cut as he worked to rebuild not just a business but an integral part of the community fabric. With determination coursing through his veins, Jake pulled out his phone to set up a meeting, this time with someone who could directly affect his shop's survival. He punched in the digits, ready to confront the very corporation that had held him at bay for far too long. The line rang, and with it, echoes of anxiety stirred once more. What weight would this call carry, and what revelations would unfold from it. Jake stared at his phone, heart hammering in his chest as each ring echoed like thunder in the cavernous spaces of his mind. Conversations with Carl had always been difficult, drenched in corporate lingo that left little room for genuine understanding or connection. But this time, the stakes felt higher. He couldn't afford to present himself as desperate, he had to exude control, competence, a commander navigating through a storm. Jake? Carl's voice finally broke the silence, an unexpected jolt of familiarity cutting through the fog of his insecurities. Carl, thanks for picking up. I appreciate you making time, Jake said, forcing steadiness into his tone. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, envisioning the customer who had entered his shop earlier and the uncertain spark in their eyes. If he could convey just a fraction of the passion he felt, perhaps Carl would listen. Let us get straight to it. I have some thoughts about our last conversation. The projections you provided, I think they understate potential opportunities for growth. I've been working on a few community-focused ideas that could drive traffic and make our partnership more attractive to your executives. Jake felt adrenaline surging, empowering his every word. He laid out his ideas succinctly, detailing workshops and programming that not only revitalized his business but also re-engaged customers in innovative ways. With each project, he explained, he could almost see sparks igniting within Carl's interests. Was he holding Carl's attention? Interesting. You think that is feasible? Carl's skepticism seeped through, a wave soaking the enthusiasm Jake had generated. Absolutely, Jake replied, trying to inject confidence into the mix. But it needs backing. A commitment from your side could really give this idea the legs it needs. We can leverage your resources to create something more than just transactions, it's about nurturing loyalty. Silence. Jake imagined Carl calculating risks, weighing numbers against the lofty dreams emanating from the butcher's mouth. His breath caught in his throat. Had he gone too far? Then Carl spoke, you know, I see potential, but numbers can't lie. I'll need to see specifics. Can you send me a formal proposal? Realization washed over Jake, igniting his resolve. Yes, I can prepare that. But I want to emphasize that this isn't just about filling seats in workshops. It's about connecting with our patrons, nurturing culinary knowledge, and restoring the joy of food. We have to give them a reason to care. As they exchanged closing pleasantries, Jake felt a rush of relief intermingled with the thrill of possibility. Reaching for a nearby notepad, he began to jot down a list of everything he needed to include in the formal proposal. But as his pen scratched against the paper, doubt seeped in again. Would Carl truly advocate for these changes at a corporate level, or would he dismiss them as too idealistic? Vulnerability took hold, stirring images of empty shelves and disappointed customers in his mind. Jake paused, realizing he was not simply fighting for his shop, he was challenging himself to redefine what success meant. He didn't want to craft a sterile business proposal that would likely end in a draw. He wanted a document filled with passion, vision, and actionable steps rooted in community engagement. He closed his eyes, envisioning a bustling shop filled with eager learners. This was about more than just numbers. It was a chance to reconnect to the culinary art he loved. He could see the faces of families and friends gathered around the workshop tables, and it filled him with fire. The soft patter of the rain continued outside, a gentle reminder of the cyclical nature of challenges and progress. With a determined nod, Jake grabbed a fresh notebook and set aside the one filled with yesterday's disappointments, ready to forge a new path. He needed to find a way to communicate that passion effectively, to encapsulate this vision into words that could inspire not just Carl, but also the community. With renewed focus, Jake looked around his shop and felt the weight of expectation tethered to each corner, each shelf, and every cut of meat. The quiet hum of resolve pulsed within him, and he knew he would rise to meet this challenge. The plan was forming, But Jake sensed something lurking beneath the surface. What did it mean to risk everything? As he began drafting his proposal, a shadow of doubt hovered on the horizon. Would it truly be enough to sway Carl, or would this be yet another battle in an unending war? He couldn't shake the feeling that the true difficulty lay ahead. Each decision could either tear him down or push him toward triumph, but the fear of failure gnawed at him like an old, familiar friend. Just as he finished crafting the outlines of his proposal, his phone vibrated. It was a message from Elise, and a pang of curiosity washed over him. Let us meet. I have an idea that could help. Intrigued and anxious, Jake's heart raced once more. What could Elise be envisioning, and would it fit into his mission? The threads of his journey were weaving together in ways he hadn't anticipated, igniting hope and trepidation in equal measure. He couldn't afford to hold back now. The next move could either lay a foundation or crumble what he had worked toward. Would Elise's idea be the spark needed to illuminate the path ahead? Jake leaned against the cold countertop, the glow of his phone lighting up the darkened corners of the shop. Elise's message lingered ominously in the air, its implications swirling through his thoughts. As curiosity wrestled with anxiety, he considered what Elise could possibly offer. Maria had always believed in her ideas, but could this be the nudge he needed, or would it detract from his own vision? The weight of uncertainty hung heavy on him. Pushing himself away from the counter, Jake paced the length of the shop, his mind racing through all he had envisioned. Every inch of space was filled with memories, aspirations, and the incessant possibility of failure. He had crafted a vision based on passion, yet here he was, contemplating another's plans. Would surrendering to her concept mean he was abandoning his own? No. He clenched his fists, pulling back the spiraling doubts. The question wasn't whether he was giving up on his vision, but whether he could assimilate fresh ideas with his own. Growth often lay in collaboration, didn't it? Elise was creative and possessed a fresh perspective. Perhaps her idea could integrate seamlessly with his proposal. The thought emboldened him. Deciding to meet Elise, he grabbed his jacket and stepped outside, the cool air grazing against his skin, a brisk reminder of the urgency at hand. The door chimed softly behind him, a hint of new beginnings wafting through the air. Parking his thoughts as he approached the cafe, he mentally rehearsed how to maintain the core of his vision while remaining open to hers. As he settled into the corner booth where they had shared countless brainstorming sessions, Jake reminded himself of the power of adaptability. Each proposal, each partnership was a chance to evolve not just as a professional, but as a person. The stakes felt colossal, yet he understood that if he intended to make an impact, he couldn't remain stagnant. Elise arrived, her presence emanating warmth and enthusiasm. Jake. I'm excited to talk. I've been thinking a lot about your workshops, she said, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Me too, he replied, a measured confidence underlying his tone. I've been putting together a proposal focused on community engagement, and I'd love to hear what you've got in mind. As they dove into the conversation, Elise's ideas unfolded like a vibrant tapestry, filled with colorful threads of connection and creativity. She spoke passionately about experiential cooking classes, collaborating with local farmers, and weaving cultural stories into their offerings. Sparks flew as she elaborated on possibilities that would position his shop not just as a locale but as a vital part of the culinary narrative in town. With each new idea, Jake felt the waves of uncertainty retreating. Elise's vision wasn't just compatible, it infused his own with life and energy. The concept of curating an experience rather than merely a service resonated deeply. If he could merge his passion with her innovation, they might create something profoundly impactful. A sense of resolve tightened inside him. However, in the back of his mind, a new question emerged: could he transition from the cautious business owner he had been to a bold visionary willing to take risks? The meeting advanced, sketching out blueprints of potential workshops while Jake's heart raced at the thought of what was taking shape in front of him. The joy they shared ignited ideas but also highlighted a gnawing fear within him, the fear of stepping too far from his original vision, the fear of appearing vulnerable in front of Elise. As they wrapped up, Jake felt the exhilaration of both possibility and pressure. Could he balance these innovative ideas while staying true to himself? Was he ready to intertwine such vital elements into his proposal that would lead him to a decisive breakthrough? The answer lingered just out of reach, like a distant melody he couldn't yet pin down. He wasn't finished yet, not by a long shot. Arming himself with new insights from Elise, he headed back to the shop, heart pounding, with anticipation and uncertainty intertwined. When he returned, the atmosphere of the shop felt heavy, almost expectant. He breathed in the familiar scent of aged meat and spices, a reminder of his roots. But now, change was buzzing beneath the surface. Would the new proposal ignite the spark he longed for, or would the additional complexities drive him deeper into doubt? With a renewed sense of purpose, he seized the notebook and began drafting combined ideas, consciousness brimming with the need to blend passion with precision. But as he drew up the framework for a lively workshop, the question loomed: how would his team respond to these bold changes? Jake paused, realizing that each person he brought into this new venture would shape its outcome. It was not just about spearheading a transformation, but about bringing everyone along on this journey, an uncharted course filled with risks that could either lead to a remarkable fusion or shatter the fragile unity he had spent years building. With the shadows stretching across the floor like a silent call to action, he knew he was no longer just navigating his own path. He was about to step into a realm where he might have to confront fear itself, the fear of losing control while welcoming new elements into his life. What if everything he thought he understood about leadership was about to change? The sense of impending challenge loomed large, and Jake knew he could either shy away from it or embrace it fully. Jake sat at the counter, sunlight streaming through the windows, spilling golden light onto the faded wood. His notebook lay open before him, scribbled notes and sketches filling its pages. The buzz of possibility from last night's meeting with Elise echoed in his mind, yet it was entangled with a creeping anxiety. His hands hovered above the page, but he struggled to articulate his evolving vision. He had been the captain of this ship for years, steering through turbulent waters alone. Now, the prospect of collaboration with Elise felt like inviting an unknown passenger aboard. Would she respect his direction, or would their motivations clash? The fear that gripped him felt familiar yet unsettling. He had always believed in himself, so why now did he question his instincts? The door chimed, snapping him from his contemplation. Sarah, one of his most trusted employees, stepped in, her smile brightening the mood. She was quick, resourceful, and above all, driven. As she approached the counter, Jake felt a rush of inspiration. Perhaps sharing his thoughts with her could solidify his ideas and offer clarity. "Sarah," he called, beckoning her over. "Can you spare a minute?" "Of course. What's up?" she replied, her tone eager. "I want to share some potential changes we're considering for the workshops. I've been inspired by Elise's ideas, and I think we could really elevate what we offer." He paused, gauging her reaction, feeling the weight of vulnerability as he exposed his aspirations. "But I'm worried about how it will change things around here." Sarah's brow furrowed slightly. "Change can be scary, for sure. But I know how passionate you are about this business. You've always had a vision that is unique to you. What is Elise suggesting?" Jake took a breath and explained the concept: cooking classes that were more than just lessons. They would combine local ingredients, cultural stories, and experiences. As he spoke, he observed Sarah's reaction, hoping for a sign of enthusiasm rather than skepticism. "That sounds amazing," she replied, her eyes lighting up. "Imagine the community impact. It could turn into a network of storytellers and chefs." We do not only teach cooking but create connections. The conversation flowed naturally, Sarah's excitement mingling with his own. Jake felt relief wash over him. There was potential in this new approach, but there was still fear gnawing at him. What if the team resisted? What do you think the others will say? He asked, his doubt surfacing once more. Sarah considered for a moment before responding. Change can be hard for some people. But if you frame it as an opportunity for growth, a chance to learn and expand their skills, they might just surprise you. Jake's pulse quickened. This wasn't just about him anymore, his team's collaboration, their input, and their belief in the project would be crucial. He had to rally them, not just to support his vision, but to include their expertise and creativity. Do you think we should have a meeting to discuss it? He probed, an edge of determination sharpening his tone. Absolutely. Bring everyone in, get their thoughts. They'll feel valued, and you'll see different angles you might have overlooked. The idea resonated with Jake as he envisioned his team hearing about the new direction. With every passing moment, the notion crystallized in his mind: if he invited them to be part of this journey, he could transform not only the workshops but their collective spirit. Fighting both excitement and apprehension, Jake decided to set up a team meeting. He would present his ideas alongside Elisa's, and openly invite feedback. The path forward was littered with uncertainty, yet he was ready to confront it. As he jotted down notes for the meeting agenda, a thought struck him like a shockwave. This wasn't merely a professional transformation, it was a personal reckoning. For once, he wasn't just the one at the helm, he was part of a shared journey, exposing himself to potential setbacks while embracing the thrill of possibility. But as the excitement swelled within him, another question loomed. What if not everyone welcomed these changes? What if some members resisted, fearing the unknown? The thought tightened in his chest, with undeniable weight. Jake stood up from the counter, feeling the shadows of self-doubt threatening to darken his newfound clarity. He grasped the notebook tightly. It was time to confront this challenge head-on. No longer could he decide in isolation, he needed to engage his team. Could he balance the delicate threads of leadership with a newfound openness? Or would his doubts suffocate both his vision and his drive? Tomorrow would tell, as the hour of reckoning approached. The sun had barely crested over the horizon outside the diner, yet Jake was already pacing the floor, the weight of anticipation settling like a dense fog in his chest. He couldn't shake the feeling that today was pivotal, a moment that could redefine him, not just as a leader, but as a collaborator. The prospect of unveiling his ideas to the team loomed large, mingling excitement with palpable dread. Would they embrace change or dig in their heels? Stepping into the back office, he felt the familiar hum of the space around him. The walls were decorated with photographs of past workshops, vibrant colors celebrating memories, but today, those very images felt like a reminder of the status quo he was about to challenge. He could almost hear the echoes of laughter and conversations that brought the place to life, but now, uncertainty threatened to drown them out. He flipped through his notebook again, the edges curling from overuse, a testament to his restless nights. The sketches of the new class structure and flying notes filled with potential conversations swarmed his mind. Images of participants not merely cooking, but connecting, storytelling, and unraveling their cultural heritage bubbled to the surface. Yet, with every thought of possibility came a dark shadow of resistance, a fear that some might remain anchored in old traditions. Transformations were often met with skepticism, and he needed to prepare himself for pushback. His experience had taught him that the louder the voices against change, the more significant his vision needed to be. Refocusing, Jake realized he had to frame the meeting with a clarity that offered insight, not just a proposal. It wasn't merely his idea, it was a pathway for the whole team. As his colleagues began to filter in, Jake could sense their mixed expressions, curiosity intertwined with fatigue from a long week. He took a deep breath, anchoring himself in the knowledge that he was no longer alone in this journey. "Thank you all for coming," Jake began, his voice steady, though he felt his pulse quickening. "I wanted to take this opportunity to share a vision for where we can go together. I've been collaborating with Elise on a new workshop concept that I believe can elevate what we offer." The room filled with murmurs, and he continued, weaving the tapestry of his ideas, revealing how they intertwined local ingredients and rich cultural narratives. Jake looked around, seeking inspiration in their faces, wanting to gauge their initial reactions. "What do you all think?" he concluded, consuming the silence that hung like a weighted blanket around them. Instead of waiting for hands to raise, he encouraged a dialogue. Sarah's voice broke through first. "I love the idea of connecting with stories. That is what makes cooking meaningful." Her contagious enthusiasm caught on, igniting the curiosity of others. But then something unexpected happened. Rob, a veteran in the kitchen, spoke up with furrowed brows, "But what if our regulars don't want this? They come here for familiarity." Jake felt his heart race. This was the moment he had anticipated, the push he needed to navigate the turbulence. "Rob, I understand the concern. I value what we've built, but what if we expand it? What if we invite our regulars to be part of the story? Their stories could add richness to our menu." The conversation shifted as he carefully crafted the dialogue, unearthed buried fears, and harnessed hidden aspirations. They debated logistics, evening schedules, and marketing strategies. Gradually, Jake noticed the walls of resistance soften. Discussions flourished, laughter intermingled with ideas, and before long, there was a sense of collective spirit, binding them in the thrill of exploration. When the meeting concluded, Jake felt a surge of accomplishment, yet dissatisfaction lingered like a shadow. As he collected his notes, a question surfaced in his mind. Had he fully grasped the depth of resistance or merely skimmed its surface? Perhaps he needed to explore deeper connections with those who were reticent. The seed of curiosity was planted, but he had only begun to till the soil. What narratives were buried beneath their daily rhythms? In revealing that, could he strengthen their bond and his leadership? The next challenge awaited, as he would have to confront not just the resistance but the very essence of his team's identity. Would he be prepared to uncover the layers that veiled their true potential, or would distractions pull him away from dissecting their core values? As Jake stepped out into the glare of the afternoon sun, his heart beat in rhythm with both excitement and trepidation. The pulse of change had started, yet it was intertwined with the challenge of building trust. Little did he know, the real test was about to begin, one that would force him to redefine not only his leadership but demand a reckoning from the team he had sought to inspire. Jake lingered at the door of the diner, eyes fixed on the bustling streets outside. The sun was setting, casting an amber hue across the pavement, but it did little to alleviate the weight of uncertainty that clung to him. He had embarked on a journey to reshape not just the workshops but the very fabric of his team's dynamics. Yet, this journey felt like it was shrouded in fog. His thoughts spiraled back to the meeting. He had felt the spark of excitement as he unveiled his ideas, but the lingering questions weighed heavily. Was he merely skimming the surface of a deeper issue? Rob's concerns echoed in his mind, resonating with his own fears of alienating loyal customers. Jake imagined their faces when he introduced the new approach. Would they feel included or threatened? Needing clarity, he sought out Elise, who had been instrumental in shaping his ideas. As he found her in the kitchen, her focus was unwavering, but he could see hints of skepticism woven through her concentration. "Elise, do you think I addressed the concerns effectively?" he asked, cutting straight to the root of his doubt. "Honestly, you touched on it," she replied, pausing to chop herbs. "But you might need to dig deeper. Rob isn't the only one who worries about change." Jake nodded, absorbing her words. What if we held smaller, intimate sessions before the launch. Participants could voice their stories and feedback before we implement anything. We'll keep the essence of what they love while integrating new layers. Not a bad idea, Elise said, her smile a flicker of approval igniting hope in his chest. As the two brainstormed, Jake's senses sharpened. Ideas flowed, entwined with Elise's pragmatic approach, and his confidence surged. For the first time, he began to see a roadmap unfolding before him, one paved with the insights of his team. The next morning, he scheduled individual check-ins with his colleagues, vowing to transform the often avoided reality of confrontation into a space of constructive discourse. With each meeting, Jake navigated the myriad of personalities before him, discovering layers of hesitance that had long been left unspoken. He found himself drawn into conversations rich with emotions and experiences. Sarah spoke of her childhood memories tied to recipes passed down through generations. Doug expressed a silent fear of losing his routine, equating change with chaos. As he listened, Jake felt a profound connection unfold, a recognition of their shared aspirations almost drowned out by a fear of the unknown. While he absorbed their stories, a startling realization hit him: this was not merely about implementing a new workshop structure, it was about cultivating a culture of openness and shared narrative. As he paralleled his vision with their experiences, doubts transformed into bridges leading towards a common goal. Change could still honor the past while inviting a new chapter. But with every heartfelt exchange came a creeping realization that his transformation journey was reflective of his leadership. Was he skilled enough to guide them through this metamorphosis? Could he shift from being a mere facilitator of ideas to a beacon of encouragement, nurturing their progress? At the end of the week, Jake gathered the team again. With a mix of vulnerability and resolve, he shared the stories he had heard, the honesty they had built together. We all want to grow, but growth requires perseverance and unity. Let us face the fear of change together, not just as one leader, but as a collective unit. The room buzzed with a blend of anxiety and a flicker of hope as they began to see the path ahead more clearly, yet Jake felt the delicate balance between encouragement and overwhelming pressure. While they forged this connection, uncertainty lingered, the larger step of transformation still awaited to unfold. As they wrapped up, Jake could feel the electricity in the air, surging with new possibilities, but he also sensed a pivotal crossroads ahead. Would they embrace the unknown, or would apprehension tether them to comfort? With a final thought echoing in his mind, the true challenge began to crystallize. Could he lead his team not just toward a new workshop, but through the gates of collective courage? And was he ready to confront his own limitations as a leader before taking them into that uncharted territory? The potential for everything to shift propelled Jake forward, yet the weight of what lay ahead loomed dauntingly. The time had come he would have to forge ahead and confront the mountain of resistance within not only his team but himself. As Jake stood at the threshold of his butcher shop, the energy in the air crackled with potential. The nerve-wracking week of meetings had transformed his vision from mere words into a palpable promise, a promise poised to redefine the legacy of his father's butcher shop. The conversations with his team had awakened a collaborative spirit, one that could lead them toward shared success. Looking around the familiar space, he felt calm, a stark contrast to the turbulence that had accompanied him through the days prior. His colleagues had shared their fears and aspirations, and collectively, they had articulated a path forward that honored the old while inviting the new. This was about connecting with the community, bridging gaps, and fostering a culture where ingredients were not merely sold but celebrated. Standing behind the counter, he combed through the finalized proposal he had drafted with Elise. Every line was infused with determination. While the community workshops promised to be more than educational, they would reforge bonds that had frayed, creating a fabric rich with stories, flavors, and shared experiences. Jake remembered the early morning he faced the dark confines of the freezer, each heartbeat echoing his choice to fight for his family and legacy. This moment felt like the culmination of that fight, not just for survival, but for something meaningful. He had conquered not only the refrigerator but also his self-doubt, evolving into a leader who not only envisioned change but now actively engaged others in creating it. The proposal was set to be presented to the corporate representatives late that afternoon, and with each hour that ticked closer, he felt a mixture of anticipation and nerve settle into his being. Approach mattered. He needed to communicate his renewed vision with confidence. He steeled himself, ready to convey not just the business metrics but the heart behind the endeavor, the passion that fueled the vital connection between his little shop and the community it served. The meeting room felt surreal. Confronting Carl and other corporate members, Jake approached the wooden table, armed with his proposal and a new sense of authority. As he laid out the vision for communal workshops blended with culinary storytelling, something shifted in the room. Carl, typically resistant, began nodding along, engaging in the conversation instead of simply counting numbers. "We could position this as a flagship initiative," Carl began slowly, cautiously intrigued. "A model of how partnerships can drive local engagement, bringing people into our stores. It's an interesting pivot." Jake felt the surge of recognition wash over him. He had successfully articulated not just an idea but a movement. Furthermore, he had made a compelling case for compromise and cooperation. The collaborative approach that he had worked on with his team became palpable in that moment, resonating beyond the confines of his butcher shop. Hours passed in what felt like minutes, the usual sterile defeat of corporate meetings replaced by an animated discussion filled with ideas, possibilities, and encouragement. By the time Jake exited that room, a renewed sense of purpose ignited within him. He had managed to change the dialogue. Not only had he assumed control but he had also established a genuine connection with those who had once seemed unyielding. As he stepped back into the sunlight, it struck him just how far he had come. The fear that once shackled his dreams had transformed into a resilient ambition. He had proven to himself that he could adapt and evolve, transcending the limitations he had previously imposed on his capabilities. A flicker of pride surged within him, for he had not just salvaged a legacy, he had crafted a new identity, not merely Jake the butcher, but Jake the community leader, an innovator in the food narrative. The journey ahead would require commitment, perseverance, and a collective effort to engage the community, yet Jake was equipped for it now. He felt rooted within his role and ready to inspire not just his team but families, rekindling traditions and fostering new ones. With determination in his heart and a smile on his face, he headed back to the shop to share the news. The new initiatives would not only be a beacon for customers but a message of resilience and hope. Jake had truly embarked on a path of personal achievement. He was no longer a man shackled by fear, but someone eager to embrace the growth that lay ahead. The future was bright, filled with opportunities to forge connections, celebrate traditions, and thus transform his father's legacy into a vibrant narrative that would ripple through generations. As he crossed the threshold into his butcher shop, Jake looked around at his team, his partners in this beautiful journey ahead. The volatile chamber of doubt he had once inhabited felt like a distant memory. This was where he belonged now. This was the moment where every true fan of personal overcoming stories must stand up and engage. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation like Jake's. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is vital to bring more tales of growth and resilience. Comment below with your reactions and theories about how Jake's story will evolve next. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Let us inspire others to conquer their own challenges.